Hey, thanks for joining us for This Week in Evansville. I'm Johnny Kincaid. We appreciate you taking a little bit of time to join us. Be sure that you do all of those things that we need, like sharing and liking and of course, subscribing so that you don't miss a single episode of This Week in Evansville. Still some great episodes coming up as we kind of wrap up the primary election season. I can't even tell you the rumors about who we've got coming up, but it's going to be some good stuff. So you want to hit the subscribe button for sure, just so you find out about that. Today, this is really cool because a couple of my favorite people are here today. First of all, Micah Beckwith, sitting here right next to me. Micah is running for lieutenant governor of the state of Indiana. We're going to get into more detail on that, but it's something that I've never heard of anybody actually wanting to do before. So we'll get the rundown on that. Yeah. There you go. And then Kristi Risk is here. Kristi is a candidate for the 8th congressional seat. She is one of the 8 people running for that seat, in the crowd, but actually breaking loose from the crowd and nudging ahead there. So, we're glad that you're here with us today. And we're going to take a little time to just this is more of a free flow sort of show today, where we're going to just kind of pick some topics and talk about them, because there's so much going on. I mean, the world's gotten to be a pretty crazy place, hasn't it? It's
never chaos. Never dull days.
Yes.
Never a dull day.
That's very true. So, I'm going to start with Kristi because, I know your time's limited. First of all, you've been running really hard. You're doing a lot of door knocking. There are lessons to be learned in all of that door knocking, aren't there?
A lot from the people. Mm-hmm. You hear a lot. You find out just where they're really at and what they think about government. And boy, they're frustrated and disappointed, and I'm trying to give some hope back to that.
Yeah. And that's reflected pretty much on all levels of government, that feeling of frustration and everything. And I think some of that's maybe just people feel powerless.
Well, I think they feel like they can't trust people too. I mean, you get mailers, you get commercials, you get all these things that are just laden with, some of them are, miscommunications. And then people feel like, well, can I even trust the elected officials that are running, or the people that are running?
You are so kind when you say miscommunications in regard to those mailers.
They're lies.
They are heavy-duty lies. There are some people running around with pants on fire all over the place.
Lying?
This is so funny that you guys would say this, because I literally, before I came in here, just posted on my Facebook and called out all the congressional candidates and said, don't lie. If you can't run on your platform of who you are, then you shouldn't be running.
That's good.
Yeah, those negative campaigns. I know somewhere there's research that tells you that negative campaigns work, but I just can't. It just blows my mind.
Well, it's sort of indicative of our culture too, right? Like, we like to watch train wrecks. We like to watch the drama, the Real Housewives of politics, right? It's kind of that whole, just, diving into the gossip mills and the rumors. And unfortunately, people, that's what sells. People, it draws their attention. And that's why negative campaigning works, is because it's kind of this like, ooh, I want to see this. I want to see, is someone going to, get crucified over this or whatnot? And it's unfortunate that's where we are as a culture, but it is indicative of our culture, I think.
But it's not necessarily anything new. I mean, negative campaigning
goes all the way back to the beginning of our nation.
Yeah, oh yeah. Abe Lincoln was embroiled in a really ugly campaign.
Well, remember, Alexander Hamilton was shot by Aaron Burr over politics and lies and campaign stuff. So
remember the caning.
Yeah, the caning. Yeah. So I feel like sometimes we glamorize the past. We never had this type of division in our country. I'm like, well, we did fight a civil war. 700,000 people were killed. So there was great division. And so I think, though, it's good for us to remember that we should always seek to bring unity. Absolutely. And be truthful.
Right.
Yeah. And there are, it feels like in modern day campaigning, it kind of feels like it's all about the party winning.
Yeah.
It just kind of feels like we've got to maintain power. So we have to win as a party. And it just kind of makes the whole process a little
icky.
Yeah.
I'm curious, you're a party chair or county chair. And, how do you balance winning with maintaining your principles?
Well, it's difficult, to be honest, with with the other candidates. Is that what you're talking about? You're talking about for me personally?
Just in general, because you want the party to be successful, and so
for me personally, as a candidate, I'm like, I would rather lose and stand on principle than win and stand on fallacy. Yeah. That's just me personally. And with the others, it's hard. Yeah, especially when I see blatant lies.
I had a real high up leader of our Republican Party in the state tell me that they believe that we don't have principles. They said the Republican parties don't have, the party doesn't have principles. It's just, we got to win. So their principle was winning. Wow. And this was leadership within the party. And I just stopped. I said, no, we do have principles. We have the party platform. And this person said that, no, that most Republicans never voted on that. I said, yeah, we did when we elected delegates to go to the state convention to work on the platform committee and then approve it and vote it in as our principles. And I think we've got to be really, like, this is what I've been trying to communicate to chairs. Now, Kristi's a great chair, but there are chairs around the state that have no idea that it's their job to maintain the brand. Well, what is the brand? The brand is the vision and the mission statement of any organization. I'm a business owner. We couldn't do what we do if we didn't have a vision statement.
Same thing with me. If we make a mistake, I'm like, we fix it because we have a purpose and we have a vision with our business. And if it's not right and we lose money, oh well, we fix it.
And ask any coach in college basketball. They would never say that winning is the vision. They would say that we want to be successful. With what? Training up young men or women, right? Training up, making them people of character, and then seeing success, obviously, on the court or on the field. But they wouldn't sacrifice these young men and women for the sake of winning. You'd be a terrible coach if you did that.
There's probably some. There's always some bad apples.
And we know that too, because we've seen them and we said, you're a bad coach because you don't care about the kids that are underneath you.
The thing is it's always been done this way.
Yeah, well,
that's the most common thing. It's always been done this way.
That's right.
Let's change that.
Yeah. I love that statement.
If somebody ever tells you that it's always been done this way, then just know you're on the right track.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, okay, they're nervous because you found sort of a glitch in the matrix and you can make it better. So.
Well, and as a pastor, you can identify with that. We've always done it this way because that's the first sign a church is going under.
Totally. I mean, and go back to Christ when he walked the earth, like the Pharisees to Jesus. We've always done it this way. Jesus said, well, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And they're like, we don't like that because we've always done it this way. And it created a huge battle between what God was trying to do and the traditions of men. So I always tell people, don't be religious. Faith is not about religion. It's about a relationship with the Creator, right? And religion or tradition will always get in the way and make it bad. Well, in politics, we're doing the same thing. I think the Republican Party in Indiana has created a tradition, and we've now started to idolize the tradition rather than what was the original intent of the Republican Party. Going all the way back to Ripon, Wisconsin in the 1850s, what was the original intent? It was life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It was defending those three core inalienable rights. And so I think, it's going to take leaders to get us refocused on that vision ahead.
Reminds me of the Bible, because you have the first five books of the Bible, right? So you have the Torah, but then you have the Talmud, which is 50 books that they wrote to explain the first 5 books. That's kind of what you have in the Republican Party.
That's right. It's like, well, if you can stick the Constitution in your coat pocket, but like all the laws surrounding how we play out the Constitution, it'll go up. It'll be 2 stories tall if you stack them up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's and I think for voters, the average voter watching all of this, number one, they get fed up with the negatives. They don't understand what the true party principle is. So what they're hearing is that party's evil, that party's evil, or that person's evil, and they're hearing this from people who will get up at a forum and say, I'm a Christian. Here's where I go to church. And then the next thing you know, they're cutting their competition low.
Well, I know I've knocked on so many doors and I have heard repeatedly, I've got so many things in the mail. I see all these ads on TV. I don't know who to believe. I hear that over and over again. And I want to say, I'm telling you the truth. I'm knocking on your door. I'm here. I've been doing this. And it's frustrating. And they're frustrated. They're frustrated. And then they don't know. And then they go and vote. And then when that person falls, then they get very upset.
in those the mailers, here's the thing for everybody. You get that little piece in the mail. The thing you've got to look at, especially with the one that's the attack ad, is they're going to have this headline that says, so-and-so is anti-business, right? And then they'll have a little asterisk there that'll tell you where the reference is for that, what issue of what newspaper. And if you actually go back to that issue of that newspaper and you look at it and you go, that's what this is all about? Really?
Well, they really took a leap there.
How is that anti-business?
And also, it's from the Washington Post. So, really, it's funny. They'll grab all kinds of sources. I mean, it could be some random journalist online saying one thing and an attack ad, the campaign team will grab it and they'll, look, a journalist said it, so it must be true.
It's interesting.
It's crazy. Yeah,
there's crazy times we're in right now, and there is so much at stake in this particular election. This year is such an important year for elections at all levels, that we've really got to be looking at a lot more than those little sound bites that you see on the news or the little blurb in the whole reason why I started doing these interviews. Was because there just aren't the conduits there for people to get full information on a candidate. And I don't care what which side the candidate's on. Right. I'm going to let them come on here and say what they believe.
And then you hold them accountable.
Right, exactly. Because, at some point, a voter who's watching is either going to go, I think the exact same way, or I can't vote for that person, right? Yeah. But it's out of their mouth, not in your mailbox. Yeah. And that's what we're really looking for, is that informed decision to be made.
You know what I found interesting? The websites. I can't believe how many of the websites don't have any of their issues on them. They're not explaining anything. They don't want to say where they stand. I was very careful with my website to be very strategic and have my issues and where I stood on each one, because I wanted people to know. But I go to the other websites and there's nothing. And I'm like, they don't want people to know where they stand.
And your website is?
KristiRisk.com. KristiRisk.com.
And it's not risky to go with risk.
There you go.
I just made that up on the spot.
You're going to be collecting royalties on that statement now. So.
That's right. But no, you're right. I mean, we have to do our own research. I up in central Indiana, where I'm from, I'm up in Noblesville. And over the last few years, I've done, as a pastor, put out just endorsements as who I'm voting for personally. And some people will be like, pastors shouldn't be doing that. It's like, no, pastors really should be doing that. They need to go out and do the work, do the due diligence to find out who's upholding biblical values. And so I've been doing that, and it's it helps. But it's kind of got to the point where I'm not doing it this time around because I'm running for office. So I did it with the delegates, but I'm not doing it for the individual party offices or the government offices. And people are coming to me and they're saying, we're not going to know who to vote for. Like, how are we going to be able to vote if you don't have your voter guide? And I'm like, well, you should be doing your research.
Right.
This is not Dumbo's feather here. Like, you got to go out and actually do something. And just because I give you the tool that helps you take a step in the right direction, don't let that become the end all be all. And I think, to your point, the only way we overcome this negative attack world that we live in is for people to actually take it on their own responsibility to go out and do the work. And people love to blame Washington, but I always say Washington is a microcosm of us.
I'll tell you something though, you gotta be careful, Micah. You put those out, they vote for somebody and they do something wrong, they're gonna come blame you.
Well, I know, right? I get. Well, it's a lot of, and that does happen actually. Yeah. I've endorsed candidates that I thought were going to be good, and they get in the office. And they, they lie, right? Like, candidates will just tell you what you want to hear, and then they get in the office, and you're like, well, you bold-faced lied, and then I have to go back on, the radio or wherever and say, I was wrong on that one. And Rob Kendall up in Indianapolis will blast me and tell me I was wrong on that one. So, I love Rob.
It boils down to people just need to do their own research or get in touch with them. But, I don't think it's always been like that, though.
Yeah.
There's never been a great vetting, but there's more availability to people today to vet a candidate than ever before in the past.
Right. That's right. That's very true.
All you got to do is go online. You can see everybody's voting record. You can see who's contributed money to their campaign. Yeah. So who are they going to be beholden to, right?
It's a great strategy. Look to see where the candidate has given money in the past. And if they start giving, or their voting records, their voting history, if they've been voting in, just the Republican primary in the last year or two, it's probably because they thought, oh, I need to run for office and I can only win as a Republican. And so now I'm going to switch my parties. And so there's a lot of clues like that you can tell if someone's being genuine, and people change. You also want to, you want to give people grace, and you want to say, okay, like we learn from our mistakes. And so you don't want to just throw somebody under the bus just right at the beginning just because, they change parties. But you do want to ask them the tough questions like, hey, I noticed you were voting Democrat up until 2018. Like what changed, and see if they can articulate it well. And then we need discernment. That's what I think. In America, I think we've lost our godly discernment.
We really have.
And that's what we really need again. So
we've taken God out of everything.
Well, that's true. I had a county chair tell me the other day, he said, Micah, people just, they think you're too religious. They just think you're too religious. And he's a Christian himself. And I said, so how's it been working? We took God out of everything, the last 4 decades. We think we're getting better.
Exactly.
I feel like maybe we should go back and try it again, because I think we aren't. You can't really look at the culture and society and say, oh, it's getting more decent or more honorable. Schools are declining. The culture. I mean, if you go to downtown Indianapolis, you're taking your life into your own hands. Family decay.
Right.
Government's incentivizing the breakdown of the family. One of the things we do in government is we incentivize single motherhood, where the more single moms have children, we pay them more. The moment they get married, we take away all of that government funding. And we've incentivized very ungodly principles, and then we look around and we think, oh, why is it getting so bad? And it's and
I think a lot of times they think they're helping, or they try to help. Somebody's putting that in there, and they're running that law through, thinking, oh, I'm going to help them. They don't look long term. We are a very narrow-minded, short-sighted government, and we do things in knee-jerk reactions.
Great example is the funding for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan that just went through the House on Friday. And every single one of those lawmakers is going to twist themselves into a pretzel, saying we did the right thing. It was a good thing that we did this. And they're so short-sighted because you just sold out our kids again. And this is taxation without representation. This is, we have $103,000 is what every single person owes right now. We are all in debt in America. 350 million people. $103,000 is what every single person, the moment they're born as an American, that's what they owe the government.
I don't know why they're afraid to cut spending. Honestly, I really don't know why they're afraid to cut it.
Well, some of it is because people are dependent on that money. The government, once the government makes you dependent on them, then the government's responsible for taking care of you for the rest.
I get that, but I'm talking about the elected officials who say, I'm not going to vote for another continuing resolution. We've got to cut spending, and they just vote.
So I think part of it is that it's a catch-22, because they get into office, and then you have all these people who are saying, give us our government handout, and it wins them popularity.
But Micah, I mean, if you look at our delegation in Indiana, we're split. So half of our delegation didn't vote for it, and half of it did. So you're telling me that somebody in this district up here in northern part of Indiana doesn't need money, but somebody down here, you see what I'm saying? So Hoosiers in this district don't need the handouts, but Hoosiers in this district do.
I don't think probably we need as many handouts, period, right? I think, but I think it's a lie that we bought into, that we need the government's help. We just need the government to protect our liberties and to make sure that we have infrastructure so we can build families and businesses, and that's it. But I do think COVID was a good example of this. COVID, I remember talking to some Indiana legislators, and I was like, why are you taking the federal dollars? Why are you doing this? This is destroying our future. And their response was, well, if we don't take it, another state will just take it. The federal government's giving it away. Might as well come to us. And, I get it. That's a valid argument. It's like, well, it's not like we're going to stop. But at some point, somebody has to step up and say, you shall not pass, right? Enough's enough. And
which is why we have to change the narrative in Washington. And you have we need blocks that are voting together, the Freedom Caucus.
Are you going to join the Freedom Caucus?
Yes, I am.
Wow. Look at you go.
I will.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but that's another reason to vote for Kristi. When I ran for Congress in 2020, the incumbent sat down with me and she was like, She's like, I've heard that you are thinking about joining the Freedom Caucus if you win. And I said, yeah, that's absolutely right. And she's like, well, why are you doing that? I said, well, because I think those guys are my heroes. They stand up to big government and overreach, and they fight back. And she said, well, they just make it really hard to get anything done in Washington. And I said, you're a lawmaker. What you do is make law. I think we have too many laws. So if they're stopping you from making law, I'm good with that.
I'm good with that. In fact, we need to get some of those laws on
That's right. Let's pull law back. That's law means I have less liberty. And so, but that was kind of a funny, it's just, again, perspective is everything. And they just think, oh, I got to go in and pass 4 bills this session. And every other person is passing 4 or 5 bills.
Again, it goes back to that. That's how we've always done it. Let's just change that. I mean, somebody's got to, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah,
exactly.
You got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Someone's got to start somewhere. I have to go, guys. I apologize.
That's all right. Hey, doesn't she look like Margaret Thatcher?
Oh, my goodness.
That's awesome. I think she looks great. Margaret Thatcher's a hero. Thank you. Thank you for defending liberty, Kristi.
Thanks, Kristi.
Yeah. Cool. Well, now we can talk about Kristi.
Now we can, exactly.
Kidding. So.
All right. We were talking about the money thing and trying to rein all of that in. But the part of the problem with that, part of the issue is all of the lobbying that takes place, and especially when the spending on the war machine.
Yeah.
Have you seen these TV commercials now for the submarine builders?
Mm-mm.
It's Australia, United Kingdom, and USA submarine builders, and they're running ads like crazy on TV.
Wow.
Saying to the average person sitting there watching, millions of people going, I don't think I need a submarine.
Last time I checked, well, Joe Biden's trying to take away our 9mm. I don't think he's going to let us have a submarine.
Yeah,
so
exactly. So
that's hilarious. Although I would be for people owning submarines, man. I mean, it's Second Amendment was to protect us against the government, and so. But I do, to your point, like what average person, like why are you running an ad to just an average person about we're a good submarine manufacturer, other than you want them to vote for people who are going to spend a ton of money on getting that submarine builder to build submarines for our nation. I mean, that's what it is. That's exactly. They wouldn't be wasting. They're not dumb. They wouldn't be wasting ad dollars if it wasn't intentional. So.
I mean, the markup on a submarine's got to be pretty good.
That's one thing I appreciated about Trump when he came into office. Now, granted, Trump dropped the ball big time towards the end, and I'm a huge Trump fan. I'm going to vote for him again. He's a fighter. We need a fighter. But he wasn't a fiscal conservative. But early on, one of the things he did, remember, he started asking like Boeing. He said, "Hey, why are you charging us this much for these jets? Like this is egregious." And they were like, "Well, that's just what we've always done. The government always pays it." And he's like, "Well, you better cut it back, or else we're going to go to Airbus." And they cut back, and he brought competition into the market a little bit. Yeah. And so I thought that was great. And then he spent $1 trillion on COVID, so that was not great. But still, I think it's the idea of.
But he's a negotiator.
Yes, he's great.
And part of what he got hung with is that his opening shot on negotiation is always going to be outlandish. Yeah. And everybody took the outlandish for his bottom line. Yeah. And that's not Donald Trump. He's used to somebody saying, "No,
I'll meet you in the middle."
That.
Yeah, I'll meet you in the middle. But we need that. We need government to start playing from a free market. That's the invisible hand. That's the free market invisible hand. What Adam Smith wrote about, which our founding fathers would look to for building a strong economy, was this idea that there's an invisible hand. Let the free market actually free to do what it's designed to do, and competition will breed the best solution at the best possible price with the best possible quality if you let the free market do it. Why is healthcare a disaster right now? It's because we have stifled the free market. Yeah. Remember when Donald Trump passed that or signed that executive order, which was great, where it made everything transparent, like price transparency within healthcare. You know who hated it? It was the healthcare industry. Sure. It was the big hospitals, and he said, no, people should know what they're going to pay for before they have to pay for it. Yeah. And the healthcare was like, we don't want you to know. Why wouldn't they want you to know? It's because they've been gouging prices, and they know when the free market is able to compare prices that they're going to have to come down.
Right.
And they didn't want that. And so, again, we've just government, it's Ronald Reagan's, famous quote, the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm with the government and I'm here to help, right? Mm-hmm. that is so true.
It's very true.
The government will not help you, will not help us. It's literally designed to protect our liberties,
right,
protect our lives, and then give us the ability to pursue happiness, right? And not give us happiness,
right,
but let us have that shot to pursue happiness. Mm-hmm. And that's what we have to go back to. And
what I think is happening in recent decades, probably in the years after World War II, especially, I think that we got so wrapped up in consumerism, as a country, and we decided that we really didn't need to be hands-on when it comes to governmental things. Oh, that's the government's business. They'll take care of that, and I don't need to become involved in that. And that's what's been crumbling our political parties. Yeah. That people were hands off for so long, and now watch out, because people have figured that out and they're grabbing the reins back again.
Yeah, and 2 points on that. One, it's, again, indicative of our culture. We do the same thing with parenting, right? Mm-hmm. It's, I'm just going to give the school, I'm going to give the school the job of raising my kids. Right. And then we're shocked when, you give your kids over to Caesar and then little Romans come walking out and you're shocked. You're like, oh, what the heck? I didn't want them to believe that lie, and yet now they do. And it's like, well, you gave them to the government for 8 hours a day, mm-hmm. 5 days a week. And then you, mom and dad, might have had 2 or 3 hours with them in the evening before they go to bed. What did you think was going to happen? But it was this easy of like, well, the government will do it. Same thing with with taking care of the sick, the orphan, the poor, the needy, mm-hmm. the widow. The government will do it. So it was supposed to be the church's job.
Right, exactly.
And yet the church abdicated its responsibility to the government, mm-hmm. and the government does a terrible job at it.
Right.
And so we've got those 3 institutions, the family, the church, and the government. They've got to get back in the right alignment with the way the Lord designed them. And you ask anyone that is in the government, they'll tell you that government does a terrible job taking care of the sick, the orphan.
Absolutely.
DCS is a safety net. That's all it should be. But we've turned it into the first go around. We've got to do a better job as a government to say to the private sector, the charitable sector, the nonprofit sector, hey, can you, here's a problem. We want to incentivize you to actually fix it because you'll be better at it.
Right.
As opposed to saying, get out of the way, private sector will fix it. And then we have all this chaos. So.
See, my wife and I went to Italy last year. And one of the lessons we learned was dealing with what happens when government is controlling everything. And with the healthcare system, we learned what socialized medicine is the hard way because we had a medical emergency. I had to go into the ER in Italy. And did
you have to wait in the waiting room for
9 hours?
Hey.
And but the thing of it is that the hospital wasn't clean. It was grungy, and it looked more like you were in a
BMV,
an auto repair shop.
Okay,
okay. Right. So, but the ambulance driver that was taking us there, said the whole way. He spent the whole time going. Now remember, they can't charge you for anything; it's all free, and he's so proud of that. And when the doctor wrote me a prescription, and handed it to me, she said, now I have to apologize to you that the prescriptions aren't free. You'll have to pay, it was like
the drug companies get their share.
That's it. Yeah. But it was like a $6 prescription and they're apologizing over it. But the system is so in such disarray because it's the government trying to do what private enterprise should be doing.
Yeah. And it's not rocket science. It's just, it's cronyism, it's crony capitalism and it's crony politics. And that's like, I'm going to scratch my buddy's back and they're going to scratch my back. And then the people suffer because of it. And so, I am all for capitalism, but unfortunately crony capitalism has done a disservice to our nation because now the socialists or the Marxists in these, utopian college environments that just read books all day think, capitalism's the problem. No, crony capitalism is the problem.
Right.
And that's the issue. And then they'll blame capitalism, and they'll jump off of the ledge of stupid, and they'll go into Marxism and say, we just need Marxism. We need socialism, which has never worked anywhere in the world. So, again, it's almost kind of like when Jesus, he was so mad at the Pharisees. He got so ticked at them. Well, why did he get ticked? Because they were giving God a bad name, because they weren't implementing it in a fair and honest way. They weren't doing what God had called them to do. And so not only were they wrong, they were actually giving God a black eye. It's the same thing with capitalism. Capitalism is right, but when crony capitalism comes in, you got like those Pharisees that then abuse the system, and then it gives capitalism a black eye. And then you got these young 20-somethings that don't know their right hand from their left hand, saying, oh, well, that's capitalism doesn't work now, so we've got to go march in the streets and burn down buildings and demand that we're a socialist nation. And so
and that socialism, here's the thing, the Marxism especially is built with greed at the top. I mean, that's the thing. Right. You look at the oligarchs in the former Soviet Union, and these guys have these mega yachts and huge palaces and all of that. So, the only thing about Marxism is it isn't that it elevates the people at the bottom. It's that it creates a greater separation.
Yeah. You're seeing it in California right now. So the Gavin Newsoms of the world, they love what's happening in California. And sometimes you have to look at it, why would you put these policies in place that literally are destroying the middle class in California? I mean, the middle class cannot survive in California at this point. Well, the upper class, they love it because now the lower class becomes their slaves, their indentured servants. Okay. And there's no way possible that the lower class can go from lower class to the upper class in one jump. But who could go up the ladder? They could go to the middle class. They could work hard, get to the middle class, and then they could move from middle class to upper class. So there was this, but now that the upper class has removed, the oligarchs have removed the middle class, now they've created millions of servants or serfs or peasants, and they've basically now created this, you will serve me. California is going to be only the place for the mega rich. And then anyone else who's there is going to live in boxes, and literally they're there to serve the rich. And that's what Marxism creates. So all these college students that are working at, they graduate and they get a job as a barista at Starbucks. It's like, guys, the very thing you want is making you slaves. You're going to be a slave to the mega rich, and it will never, ever work out for you and the millions of other people who are stuck in, places like California.
Right. That $25 an hour wage does you no good when $25 becomes worth $10.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And you think that they would learn. Sometimes I look at California, I'm kind of like, you know what? I think you guys really need to suffer big time. I think sometimes, pain's a great teacher. And I think this of America too. I hope we never go through hard times. I would rather, that not happen for my family and my children. But sometimes we need to. Sometimes the best teacher is really hard times. I can't imagine, the chaos that would ensue if we lose the reserves currency status in the world. If China calls in our debt, $34 trillion and calls it in, we're going to be it's going to be a Great Depression all over again. And part of me is kind of like, I don't want that. But then there's another part of me is like, well, maybe then that's how we can actually get back to being on the side of truth. And sometimes, the Lord uses hard times to create strong men. And strong men create good times, and good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times, and the cycle, wash, rinse, and repeat. So.
Well, gosh, we've just taken a really cheerful turn here.
I don't know what tomorrow brings, but I know who holds tomorrow. So there we go.
And as much as I don't want to leave you on hard times, we're about out of time here.
That's fine. I will say this, though, but I do think it's perspective, eternal perspective. You know Christ, we're going to be in heaven someday together. 10,000 years from now, don't you want to look back and say that was an epic battle that we fought? Like, think about the greatest movies of all time. Why are they so great? It's because there was this protagonist that you thought it was all over, right? And at the last minute, good overcomes evil. And it's one of the best. You look at Lord of the Rings, you look at Pearl Harbor, you look at all of these great movies. Braveheart, things like that, right? Where like, man, like good was fighting hard. And I think for me, that's where, I get excited about these battles because, not because, I want to go to war, but at the same time, I do want to stand 10,000 years from now, standing around the Joshuas and the Moses of the great cloud of witnesses and say, hey, I fought too. I fought like you guys fought. I stood up when, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, hey, I got to stand in 2024, just like you guys stood, back in the day of Nebuchadnezzar. So I think when you think about that, where you're going to be in 10,000 years from now, 80 years, 90 years, 100 years is a blip on the screen. Like, let's not waste it. And let's be able to say, hey, no, we stood strong for what God was calling us to stand strong for. So,
all right.
Yeah. So there you go. That's a little bit more.
a little better finish that way. Well, it was kind of a rough landing at first.
But we're all going to die.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
Death and taxes. Ben Franklin said the two constant in life is death and taxes. So, yeah.
Well, what I want to do is wrap it up with something that I absolutely never do. I haven't done in the past with these podcasts, and I'll probably not do it again. But I'm just going to say flat out, this man's the real deal. And Micah has been working his tail off for the opportunity to serve his state, and he's been a light, he's been shining the light onto the areas that need change, and part of this surge in PC registrations that we've seen this past year, and delegates to the convention. Mike has been a part of that. I mean, there are a lot of people who have worked on doing that recruiting, but Mike has been out there on the front line on that. And so if you are one of the people who winds up becoming a delegate for the state convention, just remember this man, because I think that Micah is going to be great for the state of Indiana. I will give the same kind of endorsement to Todd Rokita. I like Todd. I've had fun with him before.
He's a fighter, man.
He is.
That's what we need right now is fighters. So
we need people who will stand up.
Todd will take a lot of criticism, even from his own party, because they'll be like, well, you shouldn't have done it that way, or you made a mistake here. And people will say, well, why do you support Todd so much, Mike? And I said, because he's one of the few people that are actually willing to go to blows with the left, right? The woke, insane, Marxist left, like, he is standing up and he is taking them. He's taking them to battle. I mean, most Republicans in our state run the other way. The moment a loud, purple-haired leftist starts screaming, all kinds of vile things at them, they run the other way. And Todd at least is a fighter. And so, and we don't have a lot of fighters in our state or in our culture. They're in short supply. So I say, listen, I'd rather have fighters right now. We can train them to be better fighters, but they gotta be willing to fight, and that's why I like Todd, because he's willing to get in there. Yeah. So,
and Kristi Risk is one of the most genuine people I've met. Yeah. The first time I heard her speak, she was at the Second Amendment Patriots meeting, and she spoke for maybe 15 minutes, and I went home that night, and as soon as I walked in the door, the first thing I said to my wife was, Kristi Risk is the real deal.
If you vote for Kristi, you can trust that she will do what she said she was going to do. Mm-hmm. And so, and I think I've seen that in her too. And she's guided by faith. She's got a great foundation in the Word of God. She's willing to stand up for truth and God's truth, the truth. And so, I agree with that. Kristi really is a phenomenal.
And she believes in removing laws instead of imposing more laws, which I think is a great stand to take. So
she literally is Indiana's version of Margaret Thatcher. So there you go. So we got to start spreading that around.
That's as bad as the winos line.
Winos and rhinos.
Yes.
Don't be a wino. Go out and do something, and don't be a rhino. So that's fun.
Thanks for joining us again this week in Evansville. We appreciate you making us part of your week. Be sure that you do all of those important things like subscribing, and you can smash the heck out of that like button, and it helps elevate this in people's feeds so that more people get an opportunity to get this information. So thanks for joining us, and join us again next time on This Week in Evansville.